Kendrick Lamar is one of the biggest rappers in the game, arguably the biggest recently. His unique flows and artistic expression have made him one of the hottest artists since the early 2010s, and one key thing acts as the backbone to all of Kendrick's success: the genius production behind his songs. So in today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into all the genius production techniques used across Kendrick's best beats, and take you inside the cinematic, soulful, and artistic world of Kendrick Lamar's production. Kendrick's music is known for its insane level of creativity. His songs always tell a story lyrically, melodically, and with the production. Plus, he uses a huge variety of different styles and sounds inside of his songs. So today we're going to be making our own Kendrick-inspired beat with 3 different sections. First, I'm going to do a chill boom bap kind of vibe. Then I'm going to switch it up with some more jazzy feeling stuff. And then at the end, we're going to add a crazy hard trap section. With each section, you're going to hear a different side of Kendrick's production, and the beat keeps getting crazier as the video goes on, so make sure you stay tuned to the end of this one. To start off, I want to dive into one of Kendrick's best albums of all time, in my opinion: Good Kid, Mad City. This album has so many amazing songs like Mad City, Backseat Freestyle, Swimming Pools, Poetic Justice, and so many more. But some of my favorite records on this album are Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, and Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe. Bitch don't kill my vibe. Bitch don't kill my vibe. I love how on both of these beats, the foundation is a super soulful, chill kind of guitar melody. So to do something similar to start off our beat, I grabbed my electric guitar and played a super simple 2-chord progression. Once I had that, I wanted to add some like high-end ear candy, so I played a high note on the guitar, and I wanted it to sound like it was almost falling. So I played a super high note on my guitar and slid my finger down like you can see right here, and it sounds like this. Once I had that, I really liked how the progression was sounding, but just sonically, it wasn't really cutting it for me. A lot of Kendrick's music uses vintage jazz or soul samples, so I wanted to get a more vintage, nostalgic kind of feeling to this guitar. So the first thing I did was grab a stock guitar amp preset from Logic, just to kind of give it that amped electric guitar kind of sound. And then I put that audio through my new Chroma Console guitar pedal, which is pretty much like this multi-effects pedal where you can add reverb, delay, filters, distortion, tape emulation, detune, and all this kind of cool stuff. Anyways, I added some saturation and then some cassette emulation to kind of give off this vintage, detuned, sampled kind of sound. And take a listen to before and after. Now that we got the guitar sounding good, if you listen to Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, you can hear that there's a smooth electric bass that's playing with the guitar in the sample. So I grabbed my bass and just followed the root notes of the guitar progression that I had just played, just to kind of fill out the low end of the loop and add to that sampled feeling. Now, this is super solid for the main progression of our first section. I just wanted to build it out a tiny bit more just to make it feel more luxurious and expensive. On a lot of Kendrick's music, you can hear this live instrumentation that just gives it that expensive, jazzy kind of sound, especially on albums like To Pimp a Butterfly. And one of the things you can hear all over Kendrick's music are live trumpets, saxophones, and stuff like that.
Fight, nigga. All's my life, hard times like... All right, here we go, third take.
So I wanted to do something similar, but I don't play any brass instruments myself. And if we're being real, VSTs really just don't cut it if you're going for that authentic jazz sample kind of sound. Luckily, I spent a bunch of time and money working with session musicians to create Vintage Essentials, which has hundreds of soulful live instrument recordings. So I went in there, started digging around, and found this live trumpet phrase. I felt like adding this just made it feel more expensive and more like a luscious sample. But even then, with the guitar, it still felt a bit thin. So to add some more fullness to the melody, I took some inspiration from Fear off of Damn. You can hear how the foundation of this beat is set by a Rhodes electric piano. And since I don't have a real electric piano in my studio, I grabbed the Electra 88 keys by UAD and I played the same chords that I had recorded on my guitar, along with a few extra notes and embellishments here and there to just kind of add to that soulful vintage feeling. And then I ran it through the exact same vintage processing on my Chroma console just to make it sound cohesive, like it was all sampled from the same record. And at this point, the sample was pretty much done, but I wanted to use a technique that Kendrick does all over his songs. He reverses vocals, drums, samples, anything and everything. Take a listen.
Something came over me. Way too.
So I took the sample we just made, bounced it all together in one audio file, pitched it up an octave, and then reversed the whole sample. But that sounded a little bit too busy and harsh, so then I half sped that and threw a little filter on it, and we get this. And now that we finished the melody, it's time to get some drums going. But really quick before we get into that, if you've been looking to level up your sound this Black Friday with some crazy discounts, I got you. I just dropped a huge bundle of my best kits for over 90% off. I put 30 loop kits, drum kits, preset packs, vocals, live instrument phrases, pretty much everything that you could need all in one bundle. It's got a bunch of crazy original soul loops like this. A bunch of trap vibes like this one. And a bunch of smooth R&B stuff like this.
One more time, more time.
And you can only get this bundle until Cyber Monday, and then it'll be gone forever. So click the first link in the description if you want to check that out. And also, all my other kits that aren't included in the bundle are up to 80% off right now. So if you've ever been looking into any of my kits, now is the time to buy. And I'll tell you what, as a thank you for watching this video, if you use the code Kendrick at checkout, it'll get you an extra 40% off all my kits other than that bundle that's already 90% off. The link will be in the description for all that. Definitely don't sleep on this. The deals won't get any better than that. But anyways, let's get back into the video. A lot of Kendrick's beats combined those vintage nostalgic kind of samples with more trap leaning drums, but I wanted to take some inspiration from the songs where he uses live drum breaks. And don't worry, I'll get into the crazy trap stuff later. But first, let's take a listen to Kendrick's use of live drum breaks. I love how Kendrick sounds on these live drum breaks, so I wanted to do something similar. And instead of just using a pre-made drum break sample, I went into the Soulfy Contact Bank, which has amazing live drum sounds, and I put down this pattern. And these drums felt great already, but if you listen to it with the sample, it just felt a little too thin to be the finished drums for a full beat. So I went into my Vintage Essentials drum kit and found a boom bap kick and snare that I could layer on top of the drum break, playing the same patterns just to make it sound more full and hard hitting. And once I added those drums, I kind of felt the same issue with the live bass from the melody. It sounded dope and I definitely wanted it in the beat, but it just felt like no matter how I processed it, it really wasn't filling out the low end and the beat ended up sounding hollow. So to keep that live bass texture, but also fill out those low sub frequencies, I grabbed a super simple sine wave and played it in a very low octave to get this. From there, I just drew in the same bass line that I played on my live bass, and combined with everything else, we get this. Finally, for one last touch before we switch this up, I wanted to take some inspiration from one of my favorite recent Kendrick songs, Purple Hearts. I love that analog synth ARP sound and that 4 count on the intro, so I wanted to do the same thing here in our beat. And to get that authentic analog synth sound, I chose not to use a VST, and instead I went to my actual analog synth, the Moog Matriarch, to play this synth ARP. And if you're wondering how to make synth ARPs like this, it's actually really easy, even if it sounds like it's kind of complicated. Get ready for a crazy cheat code. So essentially, to make this kind of synth lead ARP kind of effect, what you want to do is grab your MIDI keyboard and you want to use only these black notes. All these black notes work together in the scale of E flat minor or D sharp minor, and they're all playing together in the pentatonic scale, which is essentially just 5 notes that sound super good together at all times. Then you're going to find any basic synth lead sound. And then you're going to record yourself in MIDI, just sliding your fingers up all these black notes. So you just slide your hands up and down the keyboard just like I did there. The next thing you're going to want to do is go and grab a great analog delay plugin. My favorite one is H delay, and you're just going to drown that thing in delay. So I essentially just did that on that real analog synth there, and then I pitch shifted it to match the key of the beat that I was working on. Once I added that ARP down, I added that 4-count intro like the one on Purple Hearts and got this. That's sounding pretty fire and pretty finished. So now it's time to get into the second section of our beat, the jazzy section. All over his discography, you can hear this very jazz funk influence kind of sound, but you can especially hear it all over To Pimp a Butterfly.
Your haters, I can see the bottom in you. I can see the dollar in you. Little white. Put in captivity, raised my cap salary, celery, telling me green is all I need. Evidently, all I see was.
So I wanted to do a bit of a chord switch up here to add that jazzy out of key kind of vibe. The first thing I did was copy over the MIDI from the Rhodes in the first section of our beat, and then I started moving notes around and adding chords to kind of elevate it and give it that jazzy feeling. All right, so essentially we're starting with this chord progression, which already feels nice and soulful, but I really want to make this feel more jazzy. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just take this out so we can have some more room to work with. And then I'm also hearing another chord hit right here. We have some more opportunities to do some cool stuff. So I'm just gonna add a chord hit right there. Right? And then from here, it's just kind of messing around and trying to create moments that sound super jazzy. And there's a few cheat codes that you can use to get that kind of effect. The first one is a chromatic walk-up, which is essentially where you just play 3 notes in a row. So picture you start with this note. You hear how this note makes it sound uneasy? Like that gives it that kind of like out of key, dissonant jazz kind of feeling, which is exactly what we want. And the second cheat code you can do is using diminished chords. And the way that I like to think of diminished chords is pretty much just 2 spaces between all the notes. So as you can see right here with this progression, if we wanted to make this a diminished chord, we would just move this up 1 and then move this one up 1. And now there's 2 spaces between each note, making this a diminished 7 chord. So now it sounds like this. A much jazzier kind of vibe. So after messing around and clicking stuff in for a while, this is what I came up with. Once I had the chords down, I took that same live bass recording from earlier, and then I just manually pitch shifted the notes to match the new root notes of the progression that we just made. And when you play them together, you get this. From here, I wanted to take some inspiration from one of my favorite things that Kendrick does in his songs, soulful vocal harmonies. Kendrick uses these weird, soulful, kind of edgy vocal harmonies in a ton of his songs, and I think they really help build the whole world and sound behind his production.
All's my life I has to.
So I thought it'd be a cool idea to follow that jazzy kind of progression that we just made with my own vocals. And to do this, I'm going to use a technique that I talked about in some previous videos, but that I think is super underrated. All right, so we've got those jazzy Rhodes chords that we just put down. And essentially what I'm going to do is record my voice hitting every single one of the notes in this MIDI. And the way that I like to do this is I start with the top notes and I kind of find the melody that the top notes are playing. So it's going da, 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 right? So I find all of these top notes right here. And and then I record myself singing in those notes. And then I repeat the process with the next notes down until I have made this whole entire MIDI with only my voice. Take a listen to how it kind of builds up. Once I had those harmonies down, I added some little vocal riffs to kind of transition and introduce the vocals as a sound into the beat instead of just letting all those harmonies come in all at once. From here, I wanted to add another key instrument to Kendrick's production, live piano. I noticed that especially on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, there was a ton of live piano used across this album. Take a listen.
Kendrick made you think about it, but he is not your savior.
I noticed that these pianos felt kind of somber, not quite sad, but not happy, just like an introspective, emotional kind of feeling. So I headed over to my upright piano and started improvising some melodies that I could play on that jazzy section to try to kind of emulate that feeling. And after playing around a bit and recording the live piano, I got this. Once I had that down, I wanted to take some inspiration from Alright. I love how it's got those huge jazzy harmony vocals mixed in with that jazzy saxophone.
Tough fight, nigga. Oh, it's my life,
Even though the beat for Alright has way more energy than the one we're working on right now, I felt like this sound combo would work really well together for our beat. So when those big harmony vocals come in, I brought in some jazzy live trumpet phrases from Vintage Essentials and got this. Finally, to finish the melody on this section, I noticed something that happens a lot in Kendrick's production is that he'll kind of build out the ending and make it feel more cinematic with some strings to really kind of enhance that storytelling, evolving production kind of vibe.
Shut the fuck up when you hear love talk. Shut the fuck.
So I grabbed some string presets from the Hollywood strings inside of East West Opus, and I put down a simple melody. And then I took that melody and put it through the chroma console so it sounded less like a VST, more like a vintage sample, just like I did with the sounds earlier in the beat. Now, to finish off this jazzy B section, I wanted the drums to chill out a bit. I felt like if I just dragged in the drums from the first section, it didn't really change the energy enough and make this section stand on its own. But I still wanted to keep some of the core elements from those drums that I made earlier. So I took some inspiration from the drums on Pride and Ya. I love how these drums have that live drum feeling, but they're super slow and open, and I feel like that's exactly what I wanted for this part of the beat. So I took the drum break from earlier, half sped it, and got this. Next, I added a kick on top of that following the kick and the drum break, and I wanted to keep these drums simple, so I only added one more sound, some live claps and snaps. Kendrick's music often has super organic and natural sounding sounds in it, so I figured why not record myself just snapping, clapping like this in front of the mic to make my own organic sounding drums. So I started with one recording and just kept layering and layering until it sounded full. And once I had that, the chill jazzy section was finished. So now it's time to get into one of my favorite sides of Kendrick's production, that hard shit. Kendrick has a ton of songs, even on his earlier albums, with this super hard hitting kind of energy. And especially on recent drops like Euphoria, N95, and all of his work with Baby Keem.
Okay, Hellcat, met his homeboys in them types of lace that shit.
Take off your idols. Take off the runway. Take off the Cairo. Take off the sand.
The first thing that stands out to me on songs like N95 and Euphoria is that hype anthemic kind of feeling. I had to do a hard switch up inspired by these songs. So to replicate that energy, I started looking for a synthy brass preset. And since Kendrick's music has that luxurious, expensive sound, instead of going for a VST, I went back onto my analog synths just to really get that nice, authentic tone. And I grabbed my Prophet Rev 2 synth, which is known for having great synthy brass kind of sound. So I found a preset on there that I liked, and I played a stabby, anthemic kind of progression, similar to the brass on Euphoria and the synth on N95. I felt like this was clearly going to be the main sound for this section, so I didn't want to try to overdo it and compete with it too much with a bunch of crazy counter melodies. I just wanted to add a few more sounds to kind of fill it out a little bit more and add some more energy and ear candy. I started first by adding an ARP from my Moog Matriarch, and then I layered that twice and reversed one of the layers. And finally, I found some synth keys on the Prophet, sped it up 2 times as fast as I recorded it, reversed it, and with all those together, we get this. Next up, I wanted to create a second section of this melody that didn't have that synthy brass kind of sound, just to kind of break up the repetitiveness and make it feel like it's continuously evolving. Similar to how on N95, the main synth sound kind of drops out here and there into a more ambient kind of B section.
Take off the fake deep, take off the fake woke, take off the I'm broke, I care. Take off the gossip.
And for this little switch up on our melody, I wanted to take some inspiration from Kendrick's biggest song with his cousin Baby Keem, Family Ties.
Lesson with 4 letters, bitch. I thought you known better. I've been ducking the pandemic. I've been ducking.
I love how the melody here feels like it's more taking a back seat and kind of letting these crazy drums take the spotlight, but at the same time, the melody is giving this super dark and gritty energy. So I took those synth counter melodies that I just made and flipped them on their head to get that dark, repetitive kind of sound. And to do that, I grabbed my Chroma Console guitar pedal again and threw on this reverse delay preset. And once I did that, I flipped the audio file a little bit more to get a super fire idea for our B section. Take a listen to how I flipped it. And once I had that, it was time to do the drums. And starting out with that first section with that main synth brass kind of sound, since the brass melody already has so much energy and is taking up a bunch of space in the beat, I wanted to keep the drums on that part a little bit more simple. But then once that dark section comes in, I wanted to add some crazy over-the-top drums that are super hard hitting. But to start out, I put a simple 2-step hi-hat with a few rolls here and there and a snare down, and we get this. Next up, I wanted to take some inspiration from Cardo's drums on Euphoria. I love how Cardo uses these busy kind of open hats to add a ton of energy to the beat, and I also love how he uses a cowbell on these drums.
Blick niggas all in they coughing. Yeah, OB-ho niggas is dick riders. Tell them run to America to imitate heritage.
So I added a pretty busy open hat and a cowbell to these drums, and you get this. Finally, to finish off the drums on this part, I chose not to use an 808 because if you listen to N95, Kendrick doesn't use an 808 and instead uses a thick synth bass that gives it a more soft kind of vibe, but it still fits perfectly with the song.
Them bitches to sleep in the box while they making a mockery following us. This ain't Monopoly, watching for love.
So I grabbed the Mini Moog emulation by UAD and put down this bass line. And I purposefully left out the kick on this section of the drums to just kind of build up the energy for a big drop with a kick in 808 whenever this dark section of the melody comes in. And you can hear these busy, crazy drums on a lot of Kendrick's songs with Baby Keem.
Like he ain't been through none day free, got at least 1 B in the oven. I'm tripping, I'm okay, y'all be on E unleady.
I love how on these songs, the 808s are super busy and have a ton of rolls in them, especially because a lot of the beats today are super simple. So whenever you hear these crazy over-the-top drums, it really stands out. So to do something similar to these songs, the first thing I did was add in a super bouncy and busy 808 pattern with a ton of fast rolls. And if If you notice when I was playing that, a lot of the 808 notes are actually playing super, super low, and I did that on purpose because when you play the 808s in super low notes, sometimes it sounds a little too muddy and dirty, but I actually really wanted that dirty, grimy kind of feeling for this section of the beat. And since we didn't have a kick on that first section of the trap beat, I wanted to add a kick in here with the 808 to really just make sure this part of the beat hits hard as fuck. Once I finished that, the beat was 100% done. But before I play the whole thing through, if you enjoyed this video or learned anything so far, hit that subscribe button so I can keep making more videos like this. Anyways, let's hear this beat. So smooth. Reverse sample coming up. Here we go. Switch up. Thank you for making it to the end of this one. Like I had mentioned earlier, make sure to check out that huge Black Friday bundle, first link in the description. And if you want to buy any other kit on my site, you can use the code Kendrick for 40% off on top of the Black Friday discount that we've already got going. But anyways, if you want to learn about Tyler the Creator's production and what makes it so unique, click this video right here.